Welcome back, viewers. You're watching Beyond World is One. I'm Shivan Chandna. This is Speed News. Let's get started. As the third day of the Democratic National Convention kicked off with a first-of-its-kind Vedic prayer, where the priest sought blessings for a united country. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz formally accepted the Democratic vice presidential nomination. Walz, a former high school football coach, was greeted with chants of "Coach" at the convention. Former students marched on stage to introduce Walz for the biggest speech of his political career. Walz cast himself as a fighter for freedom on issues like reproductive rights and criticized Republican overreach on issues like abortion and IVF care. Several big names, including Bill Clinton, Nancy Pelosi and Oprah Winfrey, took the stage in Chicago on the third day of the Democratic National Convention. Former President Bill Clinton took multiple shots at Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump, accusing him of creating chaos. Meanwhile, former House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi also attacked Trump, accusing him of trying to steal democracy on the 6th of January 2021. Further, Oprah Winfrey made an unscheduled appearance at Democratic Convention, urging independent voters to support Harris. She also took a shot at Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance's childless cat lady remark. The USS Abraham Lincoln entered Mideast waters as tensions remain high over Iran's threat to retaliate against Israel. The development came as US President Joe Biden pushed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a ceasefire deal with Hamas in Gaza. In a statement on social media, Biden said he made clear that we must bring the ceasefire and hostage release deal to closure. However, he also updated Netanyahu on US efforts to support Israel's defense against threats from Iran and its proxies. The White House said the US president stressed the urgency of reaching a deal during the call. Vice President Kamala Harris also took part in the call. Negotiators are heading back to Cairo this week to try and iron out details of a deal. The current proposal, put together by the US, Egypt and Qatar over several weeks in July, is said to be the strongest form of the deal to date. Israel reiterated its stand on Wednesday, with Netanyahu's office denying reports that it has agreed to withdraw its troops from the Philadelphia corridor. Netanyahu, who visited an Air Force base in northern Israel, has said that Israel is prepared for any scenario. In the midst of the West Asia peace talks, Gazans were again on the run as they fled the western area of Khan Yunis after an Israeli evacuation order. Displaced people carried their belongings, comforted children and assisted the elderly along the journey. Gaza Civil Emergency Service claimed that Israeli military struck a school and a nearby house in Gaza City on Wednesday, killing at least 3 people and wounding 15. Palestinian health officials have claimed that Israeli airstrikes across Gaza killed at least 50 Palestinians in the past 24 hours. Ultra-Orthodox Jews, also known as Haredim, are protesting after 3,000 of them received summons to enlist in the army. Israeli police had to deploy water cannons to disperse the crowd after a scuffle broke out between them and the police. 2 years of military duty is compulsory for all Israelis before they turn 40, but ultra-Orthodox Jews were given exemption from compulsory service in the Israeli military. The blanket exemption was lifted after a Supreme Court ruling in June, and ultra-Orthodox Jews are now being asked to enlist for the military service. Amid threats from Iran and its axis of resistance, along with increasing casualties in Gaza, the pressure is growing for ultra-Orthodox Jews to enlist for the war effort. Ukraine says it has destroyed Russian pontoon bridges with US-made weapons as part of its incursion into Russia's Kursk region. Russia said that Ukraine has destroyed at least 3 bridges over the Sem River. Further, Ukrainian forces have released footage showing their strikes in the region. The video released by the Ukrainian Air Force showed smoke rising from explosions during a precision strike in Glashkovo. According to Ukraine's Air Force commander, the footage shows Ukrainian forces targeting enemy positions and equipment after the evacuation of civilians from the area. While the attack on the Kursk region continues, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that they are strengthening forces in areas seeing Russian advances, particularly in Pokrovsk front in eastern Ukraine. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has said that Ukraine had not consulted Berlin ahead of the August 6th shock incursion. Speaking at a press conference after talks with Moldovan President Maia Sandu, Scholz added that Germany is closely monitoring further developments around the incursion, but he reassured continued German support for Kiev. In a boost to already strong ties between Beijing and Moscow, Chinese Premier Li Qiang met Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Russian president praised trade relations between the two nations. Chinese Premier also met with Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin. Mishustin told visiting Chinese counterpart Li Qiang that both countries create comfortable conditions for commercial companies. Since the start of the conflict in Ukraine, Moscow has looked towards Beijing as an economic lifeline, and the two have increased commerce to all-time highs. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Poland on the first leg of his two-nation visit. In his address, Prime Minister Modi reiterated that this is not an era of war. He also thanked the Indian community for their warm welcome and highlighted that this was the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Poland in 45 years. Further, Prime Minister Modi met his Polish counterpart Donald Tusk today after his official engagements in Warsaw. Modi will undertake a 10-hour overnight train journey next on the Polish-Ukrainian border to Kiev. He will have a bilateral meeting with Zelensky during his 8-hour stay in Kiev. In the rape and murder case of a trainee doctor at Kolkata's RG Medical College and Hospital, as the Supreme Court resumed its hearing, the Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, submitted its status report on the ongoing probe as demanded by the Supreme Court day before yesterday. Looking at detailed investigation reports by the CBI as well as the West Bengal government, the top court suggested further action, that it has urged doctors to end their strike and return to work, ensuring that no adverse action will be taken against them. The court has also directed that the Central Committee investigating the case should include female members. At the court hearing, the CBI raised concerns regarding discrepancies by the Kolkata police. The probe agency alleged that the crime scene was altered. It also highlighted financial irregularities at the hospital, saying that the CCTV installed were rented and not purchased. Professor Manas Kumar Bandhopadhya has been appointed as the principal of RG Court. The West Bengal government has also removed 3 senior officials from the hospital in response to protests by junior doctors. Additionally, around 150 CISF personnel are being deployed at RG Court Hospital following an order by the Supreme Court. The force is expected to secure the resident doctors' hostel and other facilities. The developments are being closely watched as widespread protests continue to demand speedy justice across the country. Expressing shock at the sexual assault with two minors in a school at Badlapur in the Indian state of Maharashtra, the Bombay High Court pulled up the police and state government for not taking action until there was a public outcry. The court said that it was an extremely shocking situation when even a 4-year-old girl was not being spared. It pulled up the local police and state government for delays in recording the statements of the second victim and her father. The statements were recorded only after the High Court took cognizance of the matter. The court will now hear the matter on the 27th of August. Maharashtra police has filed an FIR against the protesters and has arrested several of them for vandalizing the railway station. At the same time, police remains deployed at the Badlapur school where two minor girls were sexually abused. Earlier, the National Human Rights Commission also took suo motu cognizance of the incident and asked for a detailed report from concerned authorities within 2 weeks. The US National Transportation Safety Board has opened an investigation into a crash and fire involving a Tesla electric semi-truck on a California highway. The agency said late on Wednesday that the NTSB will carry out the safety investigation along with the California Highway Patrol Authority. The electric vehicle maker and the California Highway Patrol did not immediately respond to Reuters' requests for comment. Asian shares inched higher while the dollar was pinned to one-year lows on sterling and the euro on Thursday as Federal Reserve minutes showed policymakers were ready to start cutting US interest rates. The minutes said the vast majority felt that if data came in as expected, a September cut was likely to be appropriate, and in response, US stocks rose, bonds rallied and the dollar fell. Offshore creditors of China Evergrande might be able to increase their chances of recovering funds if they can prove the property developer is due money from onshore subsidiaries to which they would therefore be entitled. Those creditors became de facto shareholders of Evergrande's onshore assets due to a January liquidation order in Hong Kong, giving them another avenue to recoup money from a firm whose offshore liabilities alone reached as much as $23 billion. Citigroup's addition of a new section concerning its multi-year reorganization to its quarterly report filed with the US Securities and Exchange Commission in August followed queries from the markets regulator. The SEC's letter to Citi, which was sent in June and disclosed on Wednesday, had asked the bank to revise future filings. In July, US bank regulators fined Citi $136 million for making insufficient progress fixing data management issues identified in 2020 and required the bank to demonstrate that it was making sufficient efforts. Australia has approved plans for a massive solar hub intended to power millions of homes domestically and supply electricity to Singapore. The project, billed as the largest solar precinct in the world, is expected to produce 6 gigawatts and begin supplying power by 2030. Climate Council Chief Executive said that the new solar hub was a bold step in making Australia a clean energy powerhouse and that such projects were essential in delivering affordable energy and slashing climate pollution. Residents of Porto Velho in the Brazilian Amazon have barely seen sunlight in days, and this comes as a thick cloud of smoke from forest fires envelops their city. The concentration of cancer-causing microparticles known as PM2.5 reached 56.5 micrograms per cubic meter of air in Porto Velho. According to data from Brazil's Space Research Institute, Rondônia has just had its worst month of July for forest fires in 19 years, with 1,618 confirmed outbreaks. The Amazon as a whole has recorded more than 42,000 forest fires from the 1st of January to 19th of August, and this is the worst number in nearly 2 decades. That number was 87% higher than in the same period just last year. Google is partnering with Australia's National Science Agency to create digital tools that automatically detect and repair software vulnerabilities in critical infrastructure. These tools will be tailored to meet Australia's regulatory standards, aiding sectors like healthcare, defence and energy. The Australian government has tightened regulations on critical infrastructure following recent cyber attacks that compromised the personal data of millions. India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has said that the growth of big e-commerce companies such as Amazon and Flipkart risks putting around millions of small brick and mortar stores in the country out of business. Goyal has accused e-commerce companies of predatory pricing practices. Over the past few years, companies such as Amazon and Flipkart have reshaped India's retail landscape, having invested billions of dollars to expand and get consumers to their platforms by offering lucrative discounts. UK's competition watchdog has shut its probe into Apple and Google app stores. The Competition and Markets Authority, commonly known as CMA, has said that it is waiting for the new Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Act before passing any judgment. UK's Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Act is a piece of legislation that is aimed at regulating digital markets, promoting competition and protecting consumers. Gamescom, one of the world's largest computer games trade fair, is currently underway in Germany. More than 1,400 participants from 64 countries are showcasing new games and technology at the fair. Thousands of fans and experts are attending the event to share their love of gaming and get a sneak peek of new releases. Despite excitement around new products and games, the absence of several key companies like Sony and Nintendo has been noted this year.